Solve quadratics by the quadratic formula. And this is actually my favorite way to solve quadratic equations. So it says the fourth and final method of solving quadratic equations is called the quadratic formula. This can solve any quadratic function as long as it is written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And what I love about this is, like it says, it can solve any quadratic function. There's no stipulations. It doesn't have to be factorable. It doesn't have to have integer answers or irrational answers. Like, it's just for literally any quadratic equation you can solve, as long as you first put it in that form of ax squared plus bx plus c. That's all you have to be able to do. And now the difficulty that comes with it is just making sure you're computing and using that formula right. But other than that, it's actually pretty mindless. So let me show you how it works. The quadratic formula is this monster of equation, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4a of c, all divided by 2a. So this is how it works. Now, the first thing you have to do is, when you have this equation like on a, you have to determine what's your a value, what's your b value, and what's your c. So I'm going to write those out. So if we look at kind of what I highlighted in pink, the coefficient of the x squared is your a, the coefficient of the just the x term is the b, and then your constant term, the one that doesn't have a variable, is your c. So for this particular problem, the a is 1, the b is, oh, careful there, it's a negative in front of it, so a negative 5, and then the c is 3. So we have our a, we have our b, and we have our c. So now let's use the formula. So x equals negative b. So I'm going to do negative 5, because it's negative b, which, as I'm sure you'll recognize, will turn into a positive. Hold on, my handwriting failed me there. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. So negative 5 is b, so negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 3, all divided by 2 times a. And so 2 and a is 1. So that's the setup. So, like, take a peek at that. Make sure you understand it. Look at it for a second. Pause it if you need to. That's the setup. And now it just comes down to simplifying. So here we go. We're just going to simplify this. So negative 5 would be positive 5. Inside the square root symbol, negative 5 squared is 25. Negative 4 times 1 times 3 would be minus 12. 2 times 1 is 2. Let's keep it going. So underneath the root symbol, we have a 25 minus 12. That is 13. I'm going to make that a 13. So I have 5 plus or minus root 13 divided by 2. And the truth is, I'm actually going to stop this problem right here. Reason being is because the square root of 13, it doesn't simplify. It's some crazy irrational number. You can type it in here, and you'd have to round if you were to do the square root of 13. And I want exact answers. So my two answers, there's technically 2 answers here, is 5 plus square root 13 divided by 2, and 5 minus square root 13 divided by 2, right? Because that's what that plus or minus symbol means. So that's the quadratic formula. Let me say x equals this. I guess maybe I should write x equals that. Okay, so on this one, it doesn't simplify down fully. I think b might, though. Okay, so here we go. Let's do b. So first, I'm going to say a is 2. And remember, it's set equal to 0, right? We got to have it in that form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. B is 7, and c is negative 15. So using that formula, maybe I'll just keep it on screen. So x equals negative b. So negative 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared. B is 7, so 7 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 15, all over 2 times a. And a is 2, so 2 times 2. that's the setup. Now we're going to simplify this. So this would be negative 7 plus or minus. 7 squared is 49. Now before I write that minus there, let's be careful here because we have a minus 4 times 2 times negative 15. So those two, that minus or that negative 4 times the negative 15, I actually know this is going to be positive. So negative 4 times 2 is 8. Negative 8 times negative 15, 120. And on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. Let's keep it going. Negative 7 plus or minus 49 plus 120 is 169. And the square root of 169 simplifies. And if you don't know what it is, just type it in. The square root of 169 is 13. So this, we can keep going with this one. We're not going to stop here. We can keep going. So x is going to equal negative 7 plus or minus 13 divided by 4. And we can keep on going. So remember, x equals negative 7 plus or minus 13 divided by 4. So I can break this up into two separate problems, the negative 7 plus 13 divided by 4 and the negative 7 minus 13 divided by 4. So why don't I finish this problem off in a different color maybe. So I'm going to start going up here. So I'm going to x equals negative 7 plus 13 divided by 4. That's going to give me one of the answers. And the other answer will be x equals negative 7 minus 13 divided by 4. So I'm going to compute this one first. Negative 7 plus 13 should be 6. 6 divided by 4 is 1.5, but I'm just going to simplify that fraction to 3 halves. Negative 7 minus 13 is negative 20, and negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. So those are the two solutions. That one we were able to go out and get the full length solution. Okay. And that was because that square root of 169, whoops, did not mean to do that. The square root of 169 is a rational number of 13. So that one we were able to continue the problem. And meanwhile, on this one over here, we had to stop at that square root 13 because that did not simplify. All right, let me show you a couple more. So C is a little bit unique because remember, it has to be written in what I highlighted up here in this form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It's got to be set equal to 0 and be in that form. So before we can even start the quadratic formula, I'm going to have to subtract the 2x off, do it on the other side, and then get rid of that 7 over here. Of course, we'd have to do it to the other side. So 3x squared plus 8x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, so we got to set it up in that form before you can start doing the quadratic formula. So now let's do the formula. So remember, you know, it's beneficial to memorize it, but you will be given this formula, say on that the EOC. Okay, so we got x equals negative b, so negative 8 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 8 squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So there's the setup. So I'm going to have negative 8 plus or minus 8 squared is 64 minus 4ac. So negative 4 times 3 is, what's that? Negative 12 times, so it'll be minus 24 here. Over 2 times 3 is 6. So I have negative 8 plus or minus 64 minus 24 is 40 over 6. Now I'm going to pause here for a second because the square root of 40 doesn't simplify. If you type that in, or doesn't simplify to a whole number. If you type it in, you get 6.3245. It's an irrational number. So we can't just get this out to a whole number like we did with letter B. So you might be thinking, oh, so I just circle it now, like it's done. It says it's in its most exact form. I can just be done with it and circle it. Well, you know, we can still kind of simplify it a little bit because the square root of 40 simplifies. So maybe I'll do that in blue. Trying to find a nice spot for it. I'll just do it in here. So the square root of 40 simplifies, right? We can break that up. So that could be the biggest part of a square. I think just 4. 4 times 10 is 40. And the square root of 4 is 2. So 2 root 10. So now I'm going to rewrite this. Just hang with me here. I'm going to rewrite this as x equals -8 plus or minus 2 root 10. So over 6. So I simplify that square root 40, and kind of like a fraction, you can still kind of simplify this a little bit more. Like these coefficients can all simplify like a fraction. So they're all even numbers, so I can divide them all by 2. So as my final answer here, this is about it. I'm going to say this is -4 plus or minus root 10 over 3. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. It's like a 1 root 10. You know, -8 divided by 2 is -4. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so it's just 1 root 10. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. It's kind of like simplifying it like a fraction. Okay. Let me show you one more. So again, this one is not set equal to 0. It's not in the correct form. So I need to make it that way. So I'm going to take away the 10, do it over here. That won't combine with anything. So I just have x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Now I can begin the quadratic formula. X equals -b, -b. So it'd be -3 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So -3 squared minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a, and a is 1. I guess I never really wrote out what a, b, and c were on this, but hopefully you understand that. A would be 1 on this one, -3 would be b, and -10 would be c. So -3 is +3. -3 squared is 9. -4 times 1 is -4. -4 times -10, that's +40, so +40. Let me erase that a little. Whoops. Over 2 times 1 is just 2. So 9 plus 40 would be 49. So I'm going to make that 49. And the square root of 49 actually is just 7, right? So this one is kind of like letter B, to where it's going to simplify fully. So what I did there, you know, the square root of 49 is just 7. So I can keep going with this. So I have x equals 3 plus or minus 7 divided by 2. So it's basically 2 problems at this point. 3 plus 7 divided by 2 and 3 minus 7 divided by 2. And I'm going to do that in a different color. So x equals 3 plus 7 divided by 2. And also I'm going to have x equals 3 minus 7 divided by 2. So let's solve those. 3 plus 7 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. One solution. 3 minus 7 is -4. -4 divided by 2 is -2. And that's the quadratic formula, okay? So, you know, like B and D kind of simplified fully. We're able to get answers for those. A and C, the answers would be irrational. We're not able to fully simplify those. Sure, you could go get decimals and round and do all that, but more oftentimes than not, you're going to be expected to leave it as an exact answer. So we want to avoid the rounding by not evaluating those square roots. So that's the quadratic formula. A lot of practice available for you. So you try the next couple pages.